A callous director consistently mistreated an elderly black custodian backstage on a film set. He assumed her quiet demeanor meant she wouldn't object. However, in his arrogant insensitivity, he failed to notice that Ryan Gosling was observing. Unlike the rest of the crew, Ryan wouldn't ignore such behavior, and he knew precisely what action to take. Before we continue this narrative, please let us know your location. If you enjoy stories like this one, subscribe to the channel because tomorrow at 12:30 p.m., we have another special story for you. The movie set hummed with activity. Technicians adjusted lighting, production assistants bustled about, carrying equipment, and cables snaked across the floor like trip hazards. The director, a domineering man with a booming voice, barked orders relentlessly, issuing commands like a drill sergeant. Evelyn, an elderly black woman, moved along the periphery of this organized chaos. Dressed in a faded green uniform, her large cleaning cart filled with mops, pails, and cloths trailed behind her like a faithful companion. She worked quietly, wiping up spills and collecting discarded coffee cups, while the world around her seemed completely oblivious. Evelyn's keen eyes noticed every detail, though she herself remained unseen. Since starting this job, her presence had been treated as a necessary, yet invisible, fixture, as if she were simply part of the set's scenery, a functional element. Passing a group of grips who spilled a beverage on the floor without a second glance, she simply turned and cleaned up the mess with practiced, calm motions. She expected no gratitude, and none was offered. The director, Mr. Harding, was particularly irritable that morning. A shipment of props had arrived behind schedule, and he blamed everyone within earshot for the mishap. "Where's the efficiency?" he bellowed. "Do you think this is a holiday?" he shouted, his finger jabbing and intimidating anyone who dared to meet his gaze. Evelyn, still on her knees, felt the weight of each passing second as she gathered the broken pieces and placed them in a small bag. Harding, already fuming, muttered something about incompetence and stormed off, his expensive shoes echoing across the set. He didn't even bother to check if the task was completed. Evelyn lifted her head and looked around. The indifferent, preoccupied stares of the crew were nothing new to her, but something felt amiss in the atmosphere, as if an unseen energy pulsed in the air. With a sigh, she stood, adjusted her cleaning cart, and moved on. Her work never ceased, even though recognition never came. As she cleaned one of the side hallways, her thoughts drifted. She wondered if she would ever be seen as anything more than the uniform she wore. Unbeknownst to her, however, someone was watching from the shadows. The mysterious figure, always lurking at the edge of the set, continued to observe. Their eyes followed her every move, as if trying to capture each nuance of her silent journey. Then, an idea seemed to form. It wasn't immediate or clear, but it was there, slowly growing. Evelyn, meanwhile, was completely unaware. To her, this day was no different from any other. It was just another workday, another series of hours where she would be ignored, humiliated, and treated as invisible. But, unbeknownst to her, something was about to shift. The set had quieted down somewhat after Harding's outburst, but the tension of his behavior still lingered. Evelyn, however, continued her work as she always did. Her cleaning cart was like an extension of herself, moving with her as a silent ally. In a secluded corner, she picked up a torn piece of fabric and examined it for a few moments. Her fingers touched the material delicately, as if it were something precious. "This could still be useful," she murmured softly to herself, placing the cloth in her cart. No point in throwing it away. She knew no one was listening or cared about her words. Yet, from a distance, someone was watching. The mysterious figure, always on the periphery, kept their eyes fixed on Evelyn. Their keen gaze followed her, noting every detail, absorbing every nuance. Director Harding reappeared on set, his mood seemingly even more foul than before. He barked orders at everyone, moving with an inflated sense of self-importance that brooked no argument. When something went awry, his voice grew even louder. "Evelyn!" he bellowed, not even bothering to turn toward her. "Where are you? Why is it taking you so long to clean that hallway? You're always the one slowing everything down." Evelyn, who was finishing organizing supplies in her cart, raised her head at the sound of her name. A wave of embarrassment washed over her, but she didn't respond. She simply quickened her pace toward the area Harding had dismissively indicated. The figure observing her narrowed their eyes once more. Nearby, a production assistant handed over a cup of coffee, oblivious to the presence of the quiet observer. "The values on this set are deplorable," the mysterious figure remarked in a low but firm voice to the assistant, who looked unsettled. "Do you think this is acceptable?" Before he could respond, the figure vanished along the edge of the set, as if appearing only to plant that seed of discomfort. As Evelyn cleaned the hallway, the tension around her seemed to intensify. She was accustomed to being unseen, but at that moment she felt as though there was something different in the air. Each step she took felt heavier, as if the ground were pulling her down. Suddenly, an incident changed the atmosphere. While attempting to organize a stack of items, Evelyn accidentally dropped an important prop. The sound of the impact echoed across the set like a gunshot, drawing everyone's attention. The prop was clearly valuable, and the silence that followed was broken by the sound of Harding's boots pounding the floor. "Evelyn!" he roared, approaching quickly. "Do you know how much this costs? Do you have any idea what you've just done?" Evelyn tried to respond, but the words caught in her throat. Before she could explain that it was an accident, Harding was already towering over her, his voice cutting like a whip. He threatened to fire her, accusing her of being incompetent and dead weight to the team. The scene was almost unbearable to watch, yet no one intervened. No one except the figure in the corner. The observer's eyes were now fixed on Harding, their face expressionless, but their clenched fists betrayed their true feelings. As Evelyn picked up the fallen object with trembling hands, the mysterious figure retreated once more, disappearing into the shadows. But this time, there was more than just indignation in their gaze. There was a silent decision being made. Something was about to happen, something that would change the course of this story. As Evelyn continued her work on the set, there was a distant look in her eyes. She moved silently as always, but her mind wandered to another place, a past that, though buried beneath layers of hard work and resignation, still pulsed strongly. A life she once had before she was here, cleaning up after others. Years ago, Evelyn had been a teacher. The hands, now calloused from physical labor, once held chalk, wrote on blackboards, and shaped young minds. She was a respected educator in her community, and her lessons went beyond school subjects. They were lessons about life. Evelyn taught with passion, inspiring many. She believed education could change lives, just as it had changed hers. But Evelyn's life took an unexpected turn when her daughter Clarice was diagnosed with a rare illness. The treatment was expensive and required full-time care. Evelyn didn't hesitate before leaving the job she loved to care for her daughter. She spent sleepless nights at Clarice's bedside in the hospital, praying for her survival. Over time, her resources dwindled. Evelyn used up her savings, sold furniture, and even the home she had worked so hard to build. Despite everything, Clarice didn't survive her passing. The loss left a gaping hole in Evelyn's heart, compounded by overwhelming debt. Without her teaching position and facing ageism, she encountered closed doors in her job search. When Evelyn finally landed a role as a custodian in a small office building, it was with a mix of relief and resignation. The job interview was brief and impersonal, tinged with veiled prejudice. "Can you work quickly?" the manager inquired, scrutinizing her. "It's just that, well, sometimes people your age might not be as agile." Evelyn responded firmly, "I do what's necessary. I always have." She got the job, but not without bearing the weight of judgment at every turn. Each workday was a struggle to preserve her dignity. Back in the present, Evelyn finished cleaning the set, wiping down a makeup table. Her thoughts still drifted to memories of her past. She was pulled back to the present, however, by the sight of a discreet envelope carefully placed in her cleaning cart. No one appeared to be nearby, and the plain paper stood out against the cleaning supplies. With trembling hands, Evelyn picked up the envelope. Opening it, she found a handwritten note. The words were simple, yet profound. "You deserve more than this," she read, the sentence resonating deeply. A lump formed in her throat. Who could have written it? She looked around, but the set was nearly deserted. Only shadows and the distant echo of footsteps filled the space. For a fleeting moment, Evelyn felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time. Hope. She didn't know who had penned those words, but something inside her whispered that her life was about to change. The set buzzed with more commotion than usual. Harding raged like a tempest, spewing complaints and criticisms. Evelyn, as always, worked silently, yet her mind dwelled on the anonymous note she had received the previous day. "You deserve more than this." Though she was unaware of the writer, the words rekindled a long dormant emotion, hope. Harding, however, allowed no room for such sentiments. His shouts echoed across the set, and his words carried an even sharper sting that morning. "You there!" he barked at Evelyn as she passed by with her cleaning cart. "Yes, you. Clean that corner now before you hinder things more than you already do. It's remarkable how sluggish you are. It's as if you don't even grasp what's happening here." Evelyn nodded, as she always did, and made her way to the designated area. As she cleaned, Harding's words continued to wound. He wasn't finished. "By the way," he added, loudly enough for everyone to hear, "isn't this how it's done in your country? Or, wait, perhaps you don't even know how to do things properly." A few stifled laughs arose from nearby, but most people averted their gaze, clearly uncomfortable. Evelyn paused for a brief moment, feeling the words like a physical blow. But as she always did, she lowered her head and continued cleaning. The mysterious figure observing her, however, didn't remain passive. The star moved forward, their face now etched with restrained indignation. Nearby, they picked up a cup of water from a table and subtly placed it on Evelyn's cart, a small, silent gesture of support. Evelyn noticed the cup and glanced around, but she saw no one. That simple act, though small, felt more significant than any words spoken that day. Later, Harding continued his tirade across the set, growing increasingly frustrated with the production's progress. In a moment of exasperation, he halted in the middle of the set and raised his voice for everyone to hear. "Do you all think this is some kind of marketplace? Is this what happens when we let just anyone come in here to work? I shouldn't have to deal with incompetence from all sides, especially from people who clearly don't belong here." The comment made the atmosphere even more oppressive. Some people exchanged uneasy glances, but no one dared to speak up. Evelyn, passing by nearby, heard the words clearly. Her trembling hand gripped the cloth she was holding tightly, but she didn't look up. The mysterious figure, however, moved even closer. Their eyes were now fixed on Harding, their indignation growing with each passing second. Shortly after, Harding found yet another opportunity to humiliate Evelyn. He approached her while she was cleaning a corner of the set, making sure to mock her work. "Have you ever tried moving a little faster, dear? Or is that too much to ask? Maybe you should go back to wherever you came from and see if you can be useful there. Clearly, it's not working here." Once again, Evelyn swallowed her response. She felt the weight of every word, but she didn't reply. She simply continued her work, slowly moving away from him. The star, observing from a distance, could no longer remain silent. They walked directly up to Harding, interrupting him as he reviewed a script. "We need to talk," the star said, their voice firm and imbued with a tone that brooked no argument. Harding looked up, surprised and visibly annoyed, but the star didn't back down. The scene ended there, leaving an unmistakable sense that something important was about to transpire. Harding sat in his chair, reviewing notes for the next scene, when the mysterious star approached. Their presence seemed to shift the atmosphere on set. There was something in their posture and gaze that demanded attention. Harding, however, appeared unimpressed. He continued flipping through the script, ignoring the figure until they stood directly in front of him. "Harding," the star began, their voice low but firm, "we need to talk." Harding glanced up, visibly annoyed. "Oh, so now you're giving orders too? I don't have time for nonsense." The star didn't back down. Instead, they stepped forward, positioning themselves squarely between Harding and the rest of the set. Finally, the mystery was revealed. The star who had been silently observing was none other than Ryan Gosling. For a moment, there was complete silence. Even Harding seemed taken aback, though he quickly tried to compose himself. "Oh, so Mr. Perfection thinks he's going to teach me how to run a set now, is that it?" Harding sneered, attempting to regain his authoritative stance. "Let me guess. You think you know better than me because you're a star?" Ryan took a deep breath, ignoring the initial jab. His eyes remained locked on Harding, but his voice remained calm and controlled. "I've seen a lot on film sets," he began, "but what I've seen here is different and unacceptable." The entire set froze. All eyes turned toward the two men as Ryan continued. "Harding, do you think humiliating someone makes you a leader? That racist and degrading comments are part of the creative process? Because if that's what you believe, then you know nothing about leadership." Harding's face flushed crimson with anger. "I'm the director here, Gosling. I run this set, and you have no right to tell me how to do my job. If you don't like it, you can leave." Ryan shook his head slowly. "This isn't about me. It's about her." He gestured toward Evelyn, who was in the corner trying to continue her work as the confrontation unfolded. "Do you think it's acceptable to treat someone like they're invisible, like they're not a person?" Evelyn froze for a moment. She was so accustomed to being ignored that hearing someone speak up for her, especially someone like Ryan Gosling, left her speechless. Harding, sensing his authority slipping, tried to regain control. "She's just a janitor, and frankly, she's here to do her job. If she can't keep up, maybe it's time she found another one." Ryan stepped closer, his voice now firmer. "Just a janitor? Is that what you think? This woman works harder than anyone here. She cleans up the messes you and everyone else leave behind without a word of complaint. And yet, you think you have the right to disrespect her? That says more about you than it does about her." The silence on set was deafening. No one dared move, and the discomfort on Harding's face was unmistakable. He opened his mouth to respond, but was interrupted by another crew member, inspired by Ryan's words, stepping forward. "He's right," said the production assistant Gerald. "We've witnessed your behavior, and it's unacceptable," a crew member said, his voice trembling but resolute. Others began murmuring in agreement. A camera operator nodded, and even the sound technician, who rarely spoke, added, "This has gone too far." Visibly shaken, Gerald stood up abruptly. "So, now you're all against me? Do you think you can complete this film without me?" Ryan crossed his arms. "No one's suggesting that. However, we are stating that respect is fundamental. If you cannot extend that to everyone on this set, perhaps you're not the right person to lead it." Gerald chuckled nervously. "You're going to regret this, Reeves. You have no idea who you're dealing with." Ryan didn't flinch. He maintained his steady gaze on Gerald as the director stormed off, muttering something unintelligible before disappearing from the set. Evelyn, still standing in her corner, looked at Ryan, tears welling up in her eyes. He approached her with a gentle smile and said, "You don't deserve this treatment, and I won't tolerate it." The set was quieter than usual after the confrontation between Ryan and Gerald. It was as if everyone was processing what had transpired. Gerald hadn't returned since storming off, and the absence of his oppressive presence brought a palpable sense of relief. However, Ryan knew the issue was far from resolved. Action had to be taken to ensure this never happened again to Evelyn or anyone else. Ryan approached Evelyn as she organized her cleaning cart, still visibly shaken by the day's events. He stopped beside her, respecting her space, and spoke gently. "Evelyn, do you have a few minutes to talk?" Evelyn hesitated, glancing around. She wasn't accustomed to being approached for conversation, let alone by someone like Ryan Gosling. But something in his tone was comforting. She nodded and followed him to a quieter area of the set. Ryan began carefully, choosing his words. "I know what happened today was difficult, but I want you to know it was wrong, and it should never have occurred." Evelyn shook her head, a faint, sad smile on her lips. "Mr. Gosling, I've endured worse. I'm here to do my job, and that's all that matters." Ryan gently interrupted her. "No. You're here to be treated with respect, like everyone else, and I'm going to ensure that happens." With a plan in motion, Ryan began working behind the scenes. He gathered statements from other crew members, many of whom finally felt safe enough to share the humiliations they had suffered at Gerald's hands. Some of the stories were shocking: public shouting matches, demeaning jokes, and veiled threats of termination. Ryan also made sure that Evelyn was never alone. He and other crew members discreetly offered their support, whether it was helping push her cart through a difficult area or simply offering kind words. Meanwhile, Gerald began to sense that something was shifting. There were fewer forced smiles around him, fewer laughs at his crude jokes. He didn't yet know what was coming, but he could feel the tension in the air. That evening, before leaving the set, Ryan handed Evelyn an envelope. Inside was a handwritten note. "You're not alone. Trust the process. This will end well for you." Evelyn held the note for a long moment, a small smile lighting up her face. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she wasn't standing alone. The next morning, the set was cloaked in a tense silence. Gerald was still officially the director, but the dynamic between him and the crew had begun to change. Ryan, with his calm yet resolute presence, was leading a quiet wave of solidarity that was spreading among the team. He didn't need to say much. His actions spoke louder than words. Ryan knew it was time to bring the evidence to the producers. He understood that the production team had the authority to remove Gerald, but he also knew he needed irrefutable proof to prompt action. He compiled the videos, the crew's testimonies, and Evelyn's recordings, all of which clearly exposed Gerald's abusive and racist behavior. In the meeting room sat the key producers, Evelyn, several crew members, and Ryan. When Gerald entered, exuding his usual air of superiority, the atmosphere grew heavier. He scanned the room confidently but hesitated when he caught the looks on everyone's faces. Ryan began the meeting, his voice firm but respectful. "We're here today because there's a serious problem on this set, one we can no longer ignore." The producers exchanged confused glances, while Gerald scoffed in disbelief. "And what problem might that be, Reeves?" "Problems caused by you, because last I checked, you're not the director here." Ryan remained impassive. "No, Gerald, the problem is how you treat people on this set, and I'm not the only one who feels this way." The producers didn't take long to reach a conclusion. Gerald was immediately removed as director. One of the producers stood and announced, "This will have legal consequences, not just for Gerald, but for all of us if we don't act now. Effective immediately, he is no longer part of this project." Visibly shaken, Gerald stood abruptly and pointed a finger at Ryan. "You'll regret this, Reeves. I guarantee you won't get away with this." Ryan, as calm as ever, responded, "Maybe, but at least I won't carry the weight of knowing I stayed silent while someone suffered unjustly." Gerald stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind him. The team sat in silence for a few moments until the producer who had led the meeting turned to Evelyn. "Evelyn," she said, her voice filled with emotion, "I'm deeply sorry for what you've endured, and I want you to know that from now on, we'll make sure this never happens again." Evelyn nodded, fighting back tears. For the first time, she felt her voice had been heard. After Gerald's departure, the atmosphere on set shifted dramatically. The crew seemed more united, more willing to help one another. Many approached Evelyn to apologize or simply to thank her for her courage. Ryan made a point of speaking with each crew member, reinforcing the importance of mutual respect and solidarity. At the end of the day, Evelyn found another note in her cleaning cart. It was from Ryan. "This is just the beginning. You deserve the world, Evelyn. Never forget that." She held the note, feeling a warmth she hadn't experienced in years. With Gerald gone, the set transformed into a space of respect and collaboration. Evelyn, who had always been invisible, was now celebrated. The crew organized a small tribute to thank her for her dedication. Simple flowers, a cake with the words, "Thank you, Evelyn," and heartfelt applause marked the occasion. Ryan led the moment. "Evelyn, this set only functions because of you. You're the strength that has kept us going. It's time we all recognize that." Overwhelmed with emotion, Evelyn was promoted to supervisor of the cleaning team. For the first time in years, she felt truly valued. At the film's premiere, she saw her name in the credits with a special dedication to Evelyn, who taught us the true meaning of respect. As the audience applauded, Evelyn realized that despite life's most difficult challenges, her dignity and courage had left a lasting legacy. In the end, Evelyn reflected, no matter how small your voice may seem, it can move mountains when you believe in your worth. Stay strong, because your light will always find a way to shine.